My name is Eden, and I am a 32-year-old single mom to my amazing 10-year-old son, Jackson. For 6 long months, I worked double shifts as a nurse to save enough money to buy Universal Studios tickets for his birthday. The pure joy in his eyes when I surprised him was worth every exhausting hour. I never imagined my own family would steal my son's happiness and then have the audacity to play the victims. Before I tell you how my mother's favoritism reached a new low, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to join our community of real stories. The journey to those Universal Studios tickets began long before I purchased them. 3 years ago, my ex-husband walked out on us, claiming he needed space to find himself. That space apparently extended to avoiding most of his parental responsibilities. Child support checks came sporadically at best, and his visits with Jackson dwindled from every other weekend to once every few months, always with a new excuse. Jackson took the divorce hard at first. What 10-year-old wouldn't? But he showed remarkable resilience, maintaining his grades and keeping his gentle spirit intact. He became my rock as much as I was his. We developed routines and traditions that were just ours. Friday movie nights with homemade popcorn, Sunday morning pancakes, ice, shaped like whatever he was interested in that week, and bedtime stories, issues, that grew more elaborate as his reading skills improved. While Jackson and I were building our new normal, my relationship with my own family remained complicated. My sister Naomi had always been my mother Barbara's favorite. Growing up, it was a fact of life as certain as the sun rising each morning. Naomi received the praise, the opportunities, the benefit of the doubt. I received criticism, skepticism, and constant reminders to be more like my perfect sister. As adults, the pattern continued. Naomi married Richard, a successful investment banker, and they lived in a sprawling home in the most exclusive suburb of our city. They had twin daughters, Lily and Grace, who are now 8 years old. The girls wanted for nothing: designer clothes, the latest electronic gadgets, exotic vacations. My mother Barbara doted on them relentlessly, often cancelling plans with Jackson and me if Naomi suddenly needed a babysitter or wanted to go shopping. "Your sister has 2 children to manage," my mother would say when I expressed disappointment. "It's harder for her. You only have Jackson." Only Jackson, as if my son was somehow less important, less deserving of attention and love because he didn't have a sibling. As if being a single parent working full-time made my job easier rather than more challenging. I tried not to let the favoritism affect my son. I shielded him from it as best I could, making excuses when his grandmother missed his school play, but posted dozens of pictures from his cousin's dance recital the same day. I downplayed it when birthday gifts for the twins were extravagant, while Jackson received a generic gift card with the wrong age written on the envelope. Despite my efforts, Jackson wasn't blind. "Grandma loves Lily and Grace more than me, doesn't she?" he asked one night after a particularly difficult family dinner where my mother had barely acknowledged him. "Your grandmother loves you," I assured him, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes people just don't know how to show love the same way to everyone. I knew the explanation was inadequate, but how do you explain toxic family dynamics to a child without poisoning his view of his relatives? As a nurse at Memorial Hospital, I worked hard, but never seemed to get ahead financially. Student loans, rent, after-school care, groceries. It all added up quickly. I took extra shifts whenever they were available, often working through holidays and weekends to build a small savings account. Every extra dollar was earmarked for Jackson's future, or for the special experiences I wanted him to have. Jackson had become obsessed with Harry Potter over the past year. He devoured all 7 books in 4 months, an impressive feat for a 10-year-old. He wore his Gryffindor scarf even in warm weather, and saved his allowance for weeks to buy a replica wand. When he learned about the wizarding world of Harry Potter at Universal Studios, it became his dream destination. "Mum, they have real butterbeer there, and you can see Hogwarts, and buy wands that make magic happen in the park." His eyes lit up whenever he talked about it, scrolling through photos online and watching YouTube videos of the attractions. I made him a promise then, one I was determined to keep. "For your birthday this year, we're going to Universal Studios. Just you and me, buddy. A special adventure." For the next 6 months, I worked overtime, whenever possible. I picked up night shifts, holiday shifts, the shifts no one else wanted. I cut corners everywhere I could in our budget. Buying generic brands, finding free community activities instead of paid ones, turning down invitations that would cost money. Every sacrifice was worth it when I imagined Jackson's face when we walked through those park gates. 2 weeks before his birthday, I finally purchased the tickets. 2-day passes that would allow us to fully explore both Universal parks without rushing. I even splurged on express passes for one of the days so we could skip the longest lines. The total came to nearly $900, a small fortune in my budget, but an investment in memories we would cherish forever. Jackson's excitement was contagious. He created a handmade countdown calendar, crossing off each day with increasing enthusiasm. He researched every ride and attraction, planning our itinerary with the precision of a military strategist. He even started packing his backpack a week in advance, changing the contents daily as he reconsidered what would be essential for our adventure. In a moment of optimism, I invited my mother to join us for dinner the weekend before our trip. Perhaps sharing Jackson's excitement would help her see him more clearly. Appreciate the thoughtful, enthusiastic child he was. Maybe this could be a turning point in their relationship. How terribly wrong I was. The dinner at my mother's house was supposed to be a simple affair. Just the three of us celebrating Jackson's upcoming birthday and our planned trip. When we arrived, however, I was surprised to see Naomi's luxury SUV in the driveway. I thought it was just us tonight, I said to my mother as we entered the house, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. Naomi and the girls were in the neighborhood, my mother replied dismissively. I couldn't very well turn them away, could I? The familiar sting of being an afterthought in my mother's priorities settled in my chest. Jackson squeezed my hand somehow, understanding, even at his young age, that our special evening had already been compromised. Naomi greeted us with her typical artificial warmth, air-kissing my cheek and barely glancing at Jackson. Her twin daughters, Lily and Grace, were absorbed in their tablets at the dining table, not bothering to look up when we entered. Girls, Naomi said sharply, say hello to your aunt and cousin. They muttered half-hearted greetings before returning to their screens. My mother, rather than encouraging better manners, simply chuckled. They're at that age, she said indulgently. So independent. During dinner, Jackson couldn't contain his excitement about our upcoming trip. Between bites of his favorite lasagna that my mother had prepared, he shared details about the wizarding world of Harry Potter. There's this ride inside Hogwarts Castle. He explained, his fork gesticulating wildly. It makes you feel like you're really flying with Harry and Ron and Hermione and Ollivander's wand shop, where a wand might choose you. My mother nodded politely, though her eyes kept drifting to Naomi or the twins. It sounds like quite the amusement park, she said, her tone suggesting she found his enthusiasm excessive. It's not just an amusement park, Grandma, Jackson corrected earnestly. It's like stepping into the books. Everything is exactly like J.K. Rowling described it. Well, my mother replied, I'm sure it will be very nice. The twins, who had been ignoring the conversation until now, suddenly perked up. Universal Studios, Lily asked finally, looking away from her tablet. The one with Harry Potter. Jackson nodded eagerly, happy to have captured his cousin's interest. Yeah. We're going for my birthday next weekend. Grace turned to Naomi. Mum, why can't we go to Universal Studios? Jessica from my class went last month. I felt a familiar tension creep into the room as Naomi glanced at me with narrowed eyes. Well, isn't this a coincidence? She said with a tight smile. The girls were just asking about Universal last week. What perfect timing that Eden is taking Jackson. The emphasis she placed on my name carried an unmistakable accusation. That I was somehow showing off deliberately, highlighting something her daughters couldn't have. We've been planning this trip for months, I explained, keeping my voice even. Jackson's been counting down the days. How lovely that you can afford such extravagant gifts, Naomi replied, her voice dripping with passive aggression. Some of us have 2 children to provide for, of course. I bit back the retort that wanted to escape. That her husband's income was easily 5 times mine, that they had just returned from a 2-week European vacation, that the twins' birthday party last year had cost more than my monthly salary. My mother, sensing the growing tension, quickly changed tactics. She asked to see the tickets. Her interest suddenly piqued. I keep them at home, I said, instantly wary, in my desk drawer. You should bring them by tomorrow, she suggested. I'd love to see what they look like these days. So much is digital now. Her request seemed odd, but I was eager to move past the awkward moment. Sure, I can show you online. They're print-at-home tickets with QR codes. Jackson, oblivious to the undercurrents of adult tension, had taken out the handmade countdown calendar from his backpack to show everyone. Look what I made. Only 5 more days. He pointed to the carefully numbered and decorated squares each day, marked with a different Harry Potter symbol. The calendar was a labor of love. Construction paper cut into the shape of the Hogwarts crest each day, illustrated with tiny drawings of wands owls or golden snitches. It was exactly the sort of thing that should have made any grandmother proud of her grandson's creativity and dedication. My mother glanced at it briefly. "Very nice, Jackson. Girls, show your cousin what you made in your private art class yesterday." And just like that, Jackson's creation was dismissed, and the twins were once again the center of attention, as they half-heartedly showed artwork clearly guided by a professional instructor. Later, as Jackson enthusiastically told his cousins about the attractions he was most excited to visit, I overheard my mother speaking quietly to Naomi in the kitchen. "It does seem a shame that Jackson gets to go while the girls miss out," she said. "Especially since they're all so close in age." "Well, what can you expect?" Naomi replied, not bothering to lower her voice. "Eden has always been self-centered. Remember how she refused to be in my wedding because she didn't like the bridesmaid dress I chose? Ish. I had been 16 at the time, and the dress had been both expensive and hideously unflattering." The fact that Naomi still brought it up 15 years later said more about her than it ever did about me. As we were preparing to leave, my mother pulled me aside while Jackson gathered his things. "You know, Eden," she said, in the concerned voice that always preceded criticism, "it would be such a nice gesture if you could take the twins along on your trip. They've never been to Universal, and it would be a wonderful opportunity for all the cousins to bond." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "Mum, the tickets were nearly $900. I worked overtime for 6 months to afford just the two of us. I can't suddenly add 2 more people." "Well," she sniffed, "I'm sure Naomi would help with the cost if you asked nicely. It just seems like such a waste for only 2 people to go when you could make it a family event." "This is Jackson's birthday present," I said firmly. "It's supposed to be special, just the 2 of us." "You've always been so possessive of him," she replied. "It's not healthy, Eden. Children need extended family too." The irony of her suddenly claiming concern for Jackson's relationship with family members, who barely acknowledged him most of the time, was not lost on me. On the drive home, Jackson chatted happily about the trip, unaware of the tension that had permeated the evening. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something had shifted, that my mother's unusual interest in our plans signaled trouble ahead. "Mom," Jackson's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Do you think Lily and Grace would like the Wizarding World too?" "I'm sure they would, buddy," I replied carefully. "Maybe someday they'll get to go too." They didn't seem very excited when I told them about it. He continued, his brow furrowed. "Lily just asked if I was getting a new tablet for my birthday too, and Grace said Harry Potter was for babies." I squeezed his hand. "Everyone likes different things. That doesn't make what you love any less special." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation, but I couldn't help wondering why my family found it so difficult to support the simple joys that meant so much to my son. The next morning was a Thursday, my day off from the hospital. Jackson left for school with a spring in his step, crossing off another day on his countdown calendar before rushing out to catch the bus. I planned to use the day to finalize details for our trip, checking park hours, reviewing our hotel reservation, and organizing the things we would need to pack. Around 10 o'clock, I went to my desk to retrieve the Universal Studios tickets from the locked drawer where I kept important documents. I wanted to print an extra copy as a backup just in case. But when I unlocked the drawer and reached for the envelope containing the tickets, it wasn't there. A cold wave of panic washed over me. I emptied the drawer completely, then checked every other drawer in the desk. Nothing. I searched my purse, my nightstand, the kitchen counter, all the places I might have absent-mindedly placed them. Still nothing. My mind raced through possibilities. Had I moved them for safekeeping and forgotten? Had they somehow fallen behind the desk? I pulled furniture away from walls, looked under rugs, even checked Jackson's room in case he had wanted to look at them. After an hour of increasingly frantic searching, I was forced to confront a possibility I didn't want to consider. Someone had taken them. But who? The only people who had been in our apartment recently were Jackson and me. No one else had a key except... My mother had an emergency key. She had insisted on it years ago, claiming she worried about us being alone. I had agreed reluctantly, making her promise to use it only in genuine emergencies. As far as I knew, she had never used it, at least not when we were away. With trembling hands, I called her number. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice carefully neutral. "Eden, is everything all right?" "Mum, did you take something from my apartment?" I asked directly, struggling to keep my voice steady. A pause, too long to be innocent. "I borrowed the tickets to look at them," she finally said, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "You said you'd show them to me, but then you didn't bring them." I gripped the phone tighter. You used your emergency key to enter my apartment and take something without my permission. Mom, that's not borrowing, that's stealing. Don't be so dramatic, she scoffed. I'm your mother. I was curious about them, that's all. I need those tickets back immediately. Yes, I said, fighting to stay calm. Jackson and I are leaving tomorrow afternoon. Another pause. Well, there's a small problem, she said slowly. Naomi and the girls are here, and the girls are so excited now about the idea of going. The implication in her voice sent ice through my veins. Mom, those tickets are for Jackson and me. They cost me 6 months of overtime shifts. You need to bring them back right now. Eden, be reasonable, she replied, her voice taking on the patronizing tone I knew all too well. Jackson is just one child. Naomi has 2 girls to consider. Wouldn't it be nicer for them to have this experience? Jackson is a boy. He might not even appreciate the magic parts the way the girls would. I was speechless for a moment, unable to believe what I was hearing. Are you seriously suggesting that my son doesn't deserve the birthday present I worked months to give him because Naomi has twins? You've always been so selfish, my mother sighed. I'm trying to be fair to everyone. I'll be at your house in 20 minutes, I said through gritted teeth. Have those tickets ready to return to me. I hung up before she could respond and grabbed my car keys, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. When I arrived at my mother's house, Naomi's car was indeed in the driveway. I marched up to the front door and rang the bell, then pounded on the door when no one immediately answered. My mother finally opened it, her expression a practiced mask of concern. Eden, really, there's no need for this behaviour. I pushed past her into the living room where Naomi sat with Lily and Grace. The twins were looking at something on Naomi's phone, giggling excitedly. Where are my tickets? I demanded. Naomi looked up with an expression of manufactured innocence. Eden, calm down. The girls are right here. I don't care. Those tickets are mine. I paid for them. They're for Jackson's birthday. Give them back now. My mother placed a hand on my arm, which I immediately shook off. We were thinking, she said in a reasonable tone that made my blood boil, that since you can only use 2 of the 4 tickets, the girls could use the other 2. It would be a wonderful opportunity for them. I stared at her. What 4 tickets? I bought 2 tickets. For me and Jackson. A flicker of confusion crossed her face before she composed it. Oh, I must have misunderstood. Well, in any case, the girls are so excited now. Surely Jackson wouldn't mind waiting a bit longer. You could take him next month, or for Christmas perhaps. His birthday is this weekend, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. The tickets are dated for Saturday and Sunday. This isn't negotiable. Give them back. Naomi stood up, crossing her arms. My girls have been looking forward to so many experiences that got cancelled during the pandemic. They deserve something special too. Then buy them tickets yourself, I snapped. You can certainly afford it. It's not about the money, Naomi replied haughtily. It's about family sharing opportunities. My mother nodded in agreement. Eden, you've always been so possessive of Jackson. It's not healthy. He needs to learn to share. Share? I echoed in disbelief. Share his birthday present, that I worked 6 months of double shifts to afford while you, I pointed at Naomi, just took your family to Europe for 2 weeks. And you? I turned to my mother, cancelled plans with Jackson 3 times this year because Naomi needed a babysitter. The front door opened behind me and I turned to see Jackson standing there, his backpack still on. My heart sank. School had let out early today for teacher conferences. How could I have forgotten Mum? He said hesitantly, his eyes moving from me to my mother to Naomi. What's happening? Before I could answer, Lily piped up. We're going to Universal Studios to see Harry Potter World. Jackson's face registered confusion, then dawning comprehension as he looked at me. Mum? My mother stepped forward, her voice syrupy sweet. Jackson, honey, there's been a change of plans. The girls are going to use the tickets this weekend instead, but your mum can take you another time. Jackson's lower lip trembled as he looked at me in disbelief. I moved to his side, immediately putting my arm around his shoulders. That is not true, I said firmly. Those tickets are yours, Jackson, for your birthday. No one is taking them from you. Eden, my mother said sharply, don't make promises you can't keep. Your son doesn't need them. Her kids deserve it more. Don't be upset. Naomi laughed, the sound brittle and false. Of course, my kids should have a special experience. Jackson burst into tears, burying his face against my side. The sight of his shaking shoulders ignited something in me, a protective fury I had never felt so strongly before. Where are the tickets? I demanded again, my voice deadly calm. My mother looked away. Naomi has them. I turned to my sister. Give them back. Now. Or what? She challenged, her perfectly manicured hands on her designer-clad hips. They're just pieces of paper with QR codes. You said so yourself. You can print more. They're registered tickets with unique identifiers. I said, praying this was true, though I wasn't entirely sure. They're linked to my credit card and ID. They won't work for you. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Naomi's face. Mum said they were transferable. Mum had no right to take them in the first place, I replied. Now give them back before I call the police and report them stolen. You wouldn't dare, my mother gasped. We're family. Family doesn't steal from a child, I said, holding Jackson closer as he continued to cry. Family doesn't break into someone's home and take their belongings. Family doesn't tell a 10-year-old that his cousins deserve his birthday present more than he does. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police. I'll give you one more chance to return what's mine. They're in my purse, Naomi finally admitted, reaching for her designer handbag on the couch. She removed an envelope and held it out, her expression sour. I took it and checked inside. 2 Universal Studios tickets with our names printed on them. Relief flooded through me, but it was quickly replaced by a renewed anger. We're leaving, I said to Jackson, guiding him toward the door. And let me be very clear. Neither of you will be welcome in our home again until you apologize to Jackson. Not just to me, to him directly. Eden, you're overreacting, my mother called after us. We were only thinking of what's fair. I didn't bother responding. In the car, Jackson was still crying quietly. Is my birthday trip cancelled? He asked in a small voice. Absolutely not, I assured him, reaching over to squeeze his hand. We leave tomorrow afternoon just as planned. Nobody is taking this away from you, I promise. Why doesn't Grandma want me to go? He asked the question, breaking my heart. This isn't about you, sweetie, I said carefully. This is about Grandma and Aunt Naomi making bad choices. They were wrong to try to take something that belongs to you. Very wrong. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. I made a Harry Potter wand for Lily and Grace, he said, to take to them after our trip, so they could pretend to do magic too. His simple kindness, even toward cousins who rarely showed him the same consideration, made my throat tighten with emotion. That was very thoughtful of you, I managed to say. Should I still give it to them, he asked. That's up to you, buddy. You can decide after we get back from our trip. As we drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this incident had irrevocably changed my relationship with my mother and sister. The betrayal felt too fundamental, too deliberate to simply forgive and forget. But my primary concern now was ensuring that Jackson's special weekend wasn't ruined by their selfishness. What I didn't realize then was that the conflict was far from over. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jackson's devastated face when he thought his special trip was being taken away. I replayed the confrontation with my mother and sister, thinking of all the things I should have said, all the boundaries I should have established years ago. Around 3 a.m, a new worry took hold. What if they tried again? What if they somehow managed to use the tickets before us? They had seen them, held them, possibly taken photos of the QR codes. By dawn, I had made a decision. After getting Jackson off to school with reassurances that our trip was still happening, I called Universal Studios customer service. The representative who answered was named Miguel, and when I explained the situation, that my son's birthday tickets had been temporarily stolen and I was worried about unauthorized use, he responded with unexpected compassion. Let me check those tickets for you, ma'am, he said. I read him the confirmation numbers and he confirmed they were still valid and unused. Is there any way to ensure no one else can use them? I asked anxiously. They were out of my possession for several hours. I can flag them in our system, Miguel offered. We'll deactivate these tickets and issue new ones that can only be claimed at guest services with your ID. Would that help? The relief was immediate and overwhelming. Yes, that would be perfect. Thank you so much. I have kids too, Miguel said warmly. No child should have their birthday ruined. When you arrive at the park, go to guest services near the main entrance. I've added notes to your reservation. They'll be expecting you. After hanging up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Jackson's birthday weekend was secured. However manipulative my mother and sister might be, they couldn't ruin this for him now. That afternoon, we packed our bags for the overnight stay at a hotel near Universal. Jackson's excitement had returned full force, his earlier tears forgotten in the anticipation of the adventure ahead. I, however, couldn't shake a sense of vigilance, checking and double-checking our preparations. The new ticket confirmation, the hotel reservation. We set out early Saturday morning, arriving at Universal Studios a full 30 minutes before the park opened. I was taking no chances. As we approached the entrance plaza, a familiar silver SUV caught my eye in the parking area. My stomach tightened. It couldn't be, but it was. Naomi's vehicle, unmistakable with its personalized license plate. "Jackson," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Let's wait over here for a few minutes before we go in." Confused but agreeable, he followed me to a shaded area with a view of the entry gates. We didn't have to wait long. My mother appeared immaculately dressed as always, with Naomi and the twins in tow. Lily and Grace were bouncing with excitement, pointing at the universal globe that rotated slowly at the entrance. Naomi walked confidently, her designer purse swinging from her shoulder, likely containing what she thought were valid tickets. "Mum," Jackson whispered, spotting them too. "Why are they here?" "I'm not sure, buddy," I replied truthfully. "But don't worry, our tickets are safe." We watched as they joined the line at the regular ticket entrance, rather than guest services. Naomi reached into her purse and pulled out what appeared to be printouts, likely copies of our original tickets. She handed them to the attendant with a broad smile. Even from a distance, I could see the attendant's confused expression as she scanned the tickets, then frowned at her screen. She said something to Naomi, who leaned forward, gesturing emphatically. The attendant shook her head, then picked up a phone at her station. "What's happening?" Jackson asked. "I think they're having a problem with their tickets," I explained, unable to keep a hint of satisfaction from my voice. A moment later, a uniformed supervisor approached the gate. There was more conversation, with Naomi becoming visibly agitated. My mother stepped forward, apparently trying to smooth things over in her typical manner. The supervisor shook his head firmly, pointing toward the main ticket office. Naomi's face had gone pale, her usual composure cracking. The twins were tugging at her hands, clearly distressed by the delay. My mother's expression was thunderous as they stepped out of line and moved toward the ticket office. "Now," I said to Jackson, squeezing his hand, "let's go to guest services like we planned." The guest services counter was mercifully empty this early in the morning. I approached with Jackson and presented my ID along with the confirmation email I had received from Miguel. "Ah yes, Ms. Armstrong, the representative said after checking her system. "Miguel left detailed notes here. We have your new tickets ready, and I've added a special birthday button for Jackson." She handed Jackson a large button that read, "Today is my birthday," and he beamed as he pinned it to his shirt. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" she asked. "Actually, yes," I said, lowering my voice. "My mother and sister are here with copied versions of our original tickets. I noticed they were having trouble at the gates. I'm concerned they might try to intercept us or cause a scene that would upset my son." The representative's friendly expression turned serious. "I understand. Let me have one of our guest experience team members escort you into the park through our VIP entrance. That way you can avoid any unpleasantness." True to her word, a cheerful staff member named Carlos arrived moments later to guide us through a side entrance, bypassing the main gates entirely. "I heard someone's celebrating a birthday," Carlos said to Jackson as we walked. "What are you most excited to see today?" "Hogwarts," Jackson replied immediately. "And getting a wand at Ollivander's." "Excellent choices." Carlos approved. "The castle is amazing. Make sure you look up when you're in the Great Hall. The enchanted ceiling is one of my favorite details." As we entered the park, I cast one last glance toward the main gates. In the distance, I could see my mother arguing with a manager, while Naomi attempted to console her crying daughters. A security officer had joined the conversation, his stance suggesting the situation was escalating. For a moment, I felt a twinge of guilt thinking about the twins' disappointment. They were children too innocent in their parents' manipulations. But then I remembered Jackson's tears, the cruel dismissal of his feelings, the violation of my home, and the guilt evaporated. Actions had consequences, and my mother and sister were finally facing theirs. "Mum, look," Jackson tugged at my hand, pointing at a character performer dressed as a Hogwarts student. "Can we take a picture?" I pushed thoughts of my mother and sister from my mind. This weekend was about Jackson, about celebrating the amazing, kind-hearted boy who deserved every happiness. "Absolutely." I smiled. "This is your special day." That day at Universal Studios was everything Jackson had dreamed of and more. His eyes widened in wonder as we entered the wizarding world of Harry Potter, taking in the snow-capped roofs of Hogsmeade Village and the imposing silhouette of Hogwarts Castle rising in the distance. "It's real," he whispered, gripping my hand tightly. "It's just like in the books." We explored every inch of the magical world. drinking frothy butterbeers that left foam mustaches on our upper lips, casting spells with interactive wands that made objects move in shop windows, riding the thrilling Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey attraction inside the castle. At Ollivander's, Jackson was selected for the wand-choosing ceremony, his face a picture of pure joy as the shopkeeper helped him find his perfect match, a wand with a phoenix feather core that apparently chose him. It was an extravagance I hadn't budgeted for, but the look on his face made the extra expense worthwhile. Throughout the day, I kept an eye out for my mother and sister, half expecting them to appear around every corner. But there was no sign of them. Either they had given up and left the park, or more likely they were denied entry altogether when their copied tickets were flagged as fraudulent. By late afternoon, my phone was buzzing constantly with text notifications. I had silenced it earlier, but occasionally checked to ensure there were no emergencies. Now I saw a stream of increasingly angry messages from both my mother and Naomi. How dare you report us to security? The girls are devastated. I hope you're happy with yourself. This is unacceptable behaviour, Eden. We're family. Richard is furious about how we were treated. Expect to hear from our lawyer. The last one almost made me laugh out loud. What exactly did they think a lawyer could do? Argue that they had a right to use stolen tickets? The final text from my mother was the most revealing. I'll see you. I was only trying to make everyone happy. You've always been so selfish, never considering anyone but yourself and Jackson. I turned the phone off completely. Today was about creating joyful memories with my son, not dealing with my toxic family's warped perspective on fairness and sharing. Jackson and I stayed at the park until closing, watching the nighttime light show projected onto Hogwarts Castle. As colourful images danced across the ancient stones and familiar music from the movies swelled around us, Jackson leaned against me, tired but content. "This is the best birthday ever," he said softly. "Thank you, Mum." Those simple words made every extra shift, every budget sacrifice, every confrontation with my family worth it 100 times over. Back at our hotel, Jackson fell asleep almost immediately, his new wand clutched in his hand, and a smile still on his face. I sat by the window, watching the distant lights of the park, and finally allowing myself to process the day's emotional roller coaster. My phone, when I turned it back on, showed 17 missed calls and 29 text messages. I deleted them all without reading the new ones. Whatever drama my mother and sister were trying to create could wait. The next morning brought another full day at Universal Studios, this time exploring the other areas of the park. Jackson was still floating on the high of the previous day's Harry Potter experiences, but enthusiastically embraced the new adventures. The thrills of the Mummy roller coaster, the splashing fun of the Jurassic Park water ride, the silly antics of the Minions attraction. It wasn't until we were driving home Sunday evening that I finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Jackson," I said carefully, "I think we need to talk about what happened with Grandma and Aunt Naomi." He nodded, his expression suddenly serious beyond his years. "They tried to steal our tickets." The simple, direct truth from his mouth made my heart ache. Yes, they did, and that was very wrong of them. "Why did they do it?" He asked the question I had been dreading. I took a deep breath. Sometimes adults make bad choices just like kids sometimes do. Grandma and Aunt Naomi have some wrong ideas about fairness and sharing. They thought that because Lily and Grace wanted to go to Universal too, they should get to use our tickets. "But they were my birthday present," Jackson said, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Exactly, and nobody has the right to take your birthday present away. What they did was wrong, and that's why they got in trouble at the park." "Will we still see them?" he asked. "For Thanksgiving and stuff?" The question gave me pause. The holidays were only a few months away, and traditionally we had always gathered at my mother's house. The thought of facing them again, of exposing Jackson to their manipulations, made my stomach knot. "I think we need some time away from Grandma and Aunt Naomi," I said honestly, "until they understand that what they did was wrong and apologize to you." "To me?" He seemed surprised. "Yes, to you. They hurt you, and they need to say they're sorry for that." He was quiet for a moment, processing this. What if they never say sorry? It was a possibility I had been contemplating myself. My mother and sister were not known for admitting wrongdoing or offering sincere apologies. "Then we'll create new traditions," I said with more confidence than I felt. "Maybe we'll have Thanksgiving with just the two of us, or with friends. Or maybe we'll volunteer at a shelter and help others. There are lots of ways to celebrate holidays." He nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like that, especially the helping part." His natural empathy, even in the face of hurt, made my heart swell with pride. When we arrived home, a familiar car was parked in front of our apartment building. My mother sat on the steps, her posture rigid, her expression a practiced mask of concern. "Jackson, go on up to the apartment," I said, handing him the key. "I'll talk to Grandma." "Are you sure?" he asked, eyeing her warily. "I'm sure. This won't take long." He hesitated, then gave me a quick hug before heading inside. My mother stood as I approached, smoothing her expensive slacks with manicured hands. "Eden," she began, her voice trembling slightly for dramatic effect. "I've been worried sick. You haven't answered any of my calls." "We were enjoying Jackson's birthday weekend," I replied evenly. "The one you tried to ruin." "I was only trying to make everyone happy," she said, the exact words from her text message. The girls were so disappointed. "And whose fault is that?" "You created expectations you had no right to create. You stole tickets that weren't yours to give." "Borrowed," she corrected automatically. "And I didn't realize they were linked to your ID. That was an honest mistake." Mum?" I said, suddenly tired of the circular conversation. "What exactly did you expect would happen? That we would show up at Universal and be turned away because you had already used our tickets? That Jackson would just accept his birthday being cancelled? Or did you think I wouldn't notice the tickets were missing until it was too late?" She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I thought you could just print new ones. You said they were print-at-home tickets. So your plan was for me to spend another $900 that I don't have. After working overtime for 6 months to afford the original tickets. Richard would have reimbursed you," she said dismissively. "It wasn't about the money." "You're right about that," I agreed. "It wasn't about the money. It was about you and Naomi deciding that Jackson's happiness was less important than the twins. It was about you breaking into my apartment and taking something that didn't belong to you. It was about you telling a 10-year-old boy to his face that he didn't deserve his birthday present." "You're blowing this out of proportion," she insisted. "It was a misunderstanding." "No, Mom, it wasn't. It was the last straw in a lifetime of you favoring Naomi and her children over me and mine, and I won't allow it anymore." Her expression hardened. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means you are not welcome in our home until you apologize to Jackson, sincerely, for what you did. It means we won't be coming to your house for holidays or birthdays or Sunday dinners. It means you have lost the privilege of being part of our lives until you can treat us with basic respect and decency." "You would cut me off from my only grandson," she asked incredulously, "over tickets to an amusement park, over a pattern of behavior that has hurt him repeatedly," I corrected. "The tickets were just the most recent example." "You'll change your mind," she said confidently. "You always do. You get upset, make dramatic pronouncements, then come around when you realize how unreasonable you're being." Her dismissal of my boundaries was so familiar, so expected, that it almost made me doubt myself. Almost. "Not this time," I said firmly. "Jackson deserves better, and so do I. Goodbye, Mom." I turned and walked into the building without looking back, my hands shaking, but my resolve steady. For too long I had allowed my mother and sister's toxic behavior to infiltrate our lives. For Jackson's sake, and my own, that ended today. The fallout from the ticket incident rippled through the extended family over the next few weeks. True to form, my mother and Naomi had crafted a narrative that cast them as victims of my unreasonableness. According to the version that reached my cousins, I had deliberately excluded the twins from a family outing, then vindictively reported my own mother to security when she tried to arrange a compromise. Phone calls and text messages arrived from relatives who had only heard one side of the story. "Your mother is heartbroken," my Aunt Judith lamented. "Why would you embarrass your family at a public theme park? Surely there was a better way to handle the situation." "Naomi says the girls cried for days," my cousin Elizabeth reported. "Was it really necessary to be so harsh?" I found myself repeating the actual events again and again, feeling like I was defending actions that shouldn't have needed defense. A few relatives understood immediately, expressing shock at my mother and sister's behavior. Others remained skeptical, unwilling to believe that the family matriarch would do something so blatantly wrong. What surprised me most was the unexpected ally I found in Sarah, my ex-husband's sister. She called out of the blue one evening after Jackson was in bed. "Eden, it's Sarah. I heard about what happened with Barbara and Naomi. Are you okay?" Her concern caught me off guard. Though we had always been cordial, we hadn't maintained a close relationship after my divorce from her brother. "We're fine," I assured her. "Just processing everything." "I'm not surprised," she said, sighing heavily. They pulled similar stunts with my mom before she passed. What do you mean? Remember those family heirlooms that mysteriously disappeared from my mum's house, the ones Barbara claimed Mum had promised to her? Mum never promised them anything. Barbara took them when she was helping Mum organise her closets. The revelation stopped me cold. I had heard about the missing jewellery and antique silver, but had never known the circumstances. She just took them without asking. And when confronted, she claimed it was a misunderstanding. Sound familiar? It did, painfully so. Why didn't anyone say anything? I asked. Mum was too sick to fight, and the rest of us thought it wasn't worth creating family drama during her last months. Barbara counted on that no one would call her out because keeping the peace seemed more important. The conversation with Sarah opened my eyes to a pattern I had sensed, but never fully acknowledged. My mother had been engaging in this manipulative behaviour for years, possibly decades, always secure in the knowledge that she would face minimal consequences. Meanwhile, Jackson was struggling with his own confusion and hurt. He had nightmares several times in the weeks following the incident. Dreams where his special belongings vanished, where promises were broken, where the people he trusted let him down. "Why doesn't Grandma like me as much as Lily and Grace?" he asked one night after waking from a particularly bad dream. The question broke my heart. How do you explain to a child that the problem isn't with him, but with adults who should know better? Grandma has some wrong ideas about fairness. I told him, choosing my words carefully. And sometimes she has trouble seeing how special and wonderful you are. But that's her loss, and it says nothing about your worth. But why? He persisted. What did I do wrong? Nothing, I assured him, pulling him close. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes adults have problems that have nothing to do with children, even though children get hurt by them. It wasn't a satisfying answer. How could it be? But it was the most honest one I could give, without poisoning his view of his grandmother entirely. I decided to seek professional help both for Jackson and myself. The therapist I found, Dr. Levine, specialised in family dynamics and children coping with relational trauma. In our first session alone together, I poured out the history, not just the ticket incident, but the years of subtle favoritism, dismissal, and manipulation. What you're describing, Dr. Levine said gently, are classic behaviours of narcissistic family systems. Your mother positions herself as the central authority on what's fair and right, while actually allocating love and resources based on who best serves her ego. And Naomi? I asked. In these systems, there's often a golden child who aligns with the narcissistic parent and a scapegoat who challenges the established order. Your sister has likely benefited from her position for so long that she now perpetuates the same dynamics. The framework helped me understand why my attempts to reason with my mother had always failed. She wasn't operating from the same premise I was, that all children deserved equal love and consideration. Her premise was that she determined worth and deserving based on criteria important to her. Dr. Levine worked with Jackson separately, using play therapy to help him process his feelings. She also taught me techniques for validating his emotions while helping him develop resilience against future hurts. The goal isn't to completely shield him from disappointment, she explained, but to give him tools to recognize that other people's treatment of him reflects on them, not on his inherent worth. As the weeks passed, I felt a growing confidence in my decision to establish firm boundaries with my mother and sister. The constant second-guessing that had plagued me initially. Was I overreacting? Should I just forgive and forget for family harmony? Gradually subsided. In their place came a newfound assertiveness that extended beyond family relationships. At work, I found myself speaking up more in staff meetings, suggesting improvements to procedures that had long frustrated me. I applied for a specialized training program I had previously talked myself out of believing I wouldn't be selected. To my surprise, I was not only accepted, but praised by the selection committee for my insightful application essay. The program would mean better hours and a significant pay increase once completed, a tangible benefit of my growing self-advocacy. My mother's attempts to regain access to our lives evolved from angry accusations to elaborate guilt trips. First came extravagant gifts for Jackson delivered to our door with cards expressing how much she missed her special grandson. When these were returned unopened, she enlisted relatives to plead her case. When that failed, she began showing up at our apartment unannounced, weeping dramatically in the hallway. After the third such incident, I changed the locks and installed a simple security camera at our door. The next time she appeared, I spoke to her through the intercom system rather than opening the door. "Mum, I told you not to come here without calling first. We're not available right now." "I'm your mother," she protested, her voice carrying clearly through the speaker. I shouldn't need an appointment to see my own daughter and grandson. You need to respect our boundaries, I replied firmly. Please leave now or I'll have to call building security. You would have security remove your own mother, she gasped, loud enough for neighbours to hear. After everything I've done for you. Yes, I said simply. I would. She left, but not before promising that this isn't over and that I would regret pushing family away. What she didn't understand was that I wasn't pushing family away. I was protecting the family that mattered most to me, Jackson and myself. The first major holiday after our estrangement was Thanksgiving. Traditionally, we had always gathered at my mother's house for an elaborate meal that somehow always centered around Naomi's family's preferences and schedule. This year, I informed my mother weeks in advance that we would not be attending. Instead, Jackson and I volunteered at a community meal for seniors and families in need. We spent the morning helping to prepare food, then served and chatted with guests throughout the afternoon. This is better than Grandma's Thanksgiving, Jackson confided as we drove home that evening. Nobody was fighting and we got to help people. His observation warmed my heart. Despite the challenges of the past months, he was learning positive lessons about community generosity and healthy relationships. The holiday season brought another unexpected development. One afternoon in early December, I received an email from Naomi. The first direct communication since the Universal Studios incident. The subject line read simply, "From the girls to Jackson." Wary but curious, I opened it to find a short message. Eden, the twins made these cards for Jackson and asked me to send them. They missed their cousin. Naomi attached were images of handmade Christmas cards, clearly created by Lily and Grace, without much adult supervision. The drawings were childish but heartfelt with messages like, "We miss you, Jackson," and "Hope you have a good Christmas." I showed them to Jackson that evening, watching his face carefully for his reaction. "Can I write back to them?" he asked after studying the cards. "If you want to," I said. "What would you like to say?" He thought for a moment. "I want to tell them about the Harry Potter wands I made for them. I still have them." The next day, we took photos of Jackson with the handcrafted wands he had created before our trip. Twigs carefully painted and decorated with ribbons and beads to resemble the wands from Ollivander's. Jackson dictated a short, friendly message which I typed into a reply email. I added my own brief note at the end. The girls are welcome to visit Jackson at our apartment any time with advance arrangement. You can contact me directly to set something up. It was a small opening, an acknowledgement that the children shouldn't suffer for the adults' conflict. Whether Naomi would take the olive branch in the spirit it was offered remained to be seen. 6 months after the Universal Studios incident, our lives had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. The initial pain and disruption of family estrangement had given way to a new normal that was somewhat surprisingly more peaceful and fulfilling than what had come before. Jackson and I had settled into routines that prioritized our well-being and happiness. The therapy sessions with Dr. Levine continued, though, less frequently as both of us developed healthier coping mechanisms and perspectives. Mum, I made the soccer team. Jackson burst into the apartment one spring afternoon, waving a permission slip. Coach says I'm really good at defense. The confidence in his voice was new. A far cry from the boy who had once hesitated to try out for teams, worried about disappointing others if he wasn't perfect. He had joined a community league where the emphasis was on skill development and teamwork rather than competitive pressure. That's fantastic. I hugged him, genuinely thrilled by his excitement. I'm so proud of you for working so hard at practice. Can we call Sarah to tell her she helped me practice those drills? Sarah, my former sister-in-law, had become an unexpected constant in our lives. After our initial conversation about my mother's patterns, she had reached out regularly, eventually becoming something of a surrogate aunt to Jackson. Unlike my own sister Sarah, took a genuine interest in Jackson's life and activities. She attended his school science fair, helped him practice soccer in the park, and never compared him unfavorably to other children. She was in many ways the extended family we had both needed. The support group I had joined for adult children of narcissistic parents had been another lifeline. Weekly meetings with others, who understood the unique challenges of these family dynamics, provided validation and practical strategies for maintaining boundaries. I used to think I was the problem, I shared during one session, that if I could just be more accommodating, more forgiving, less sensitive, then my mother would treat me, and by extension my son, better. Now I understand that no amount of shape-shifting on my part would have changed her behaviour. The nodding heads around the circle reflected back the universal nature of this realization. Many of us had spent decades trying to earn the unconditional love that should have been our birthright. My mother's attempts to re-establish control had become less frequent but more extreme. After several months of alternating between angry accusations and tearful pleas, she had launched a new strategy, telling extended family members that she was concerned about my mental health. "Your mother thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown," my cousin Jennifer reported hesitantly during a phone call. "She says you're isolating Jackson from the family and becoming paranoid." "I'm setting healthy boundaries," I corrected her, "and Jackson has plenty of positive relationships with friends, teachers, coaches, and family members who respect those boundaries." "That's what I thought," Jennifer admitted. "For what it's worth, I told her she should look at her own behavior instead of diagnosing yours." The specialized training program I had completed at work led to a promotion to charge nurse of the pediatric unit, with a schedule that allowed me more predictable hours with Jackson. The additional income meant we could occasionally splurge on experiences that had previously been out of reach. "What do you think about a trip to Disney World for spring break?" I asked Jackson one evening as we planned our calendar for the coming months. "Not as big as Universal, just 3 days, but I thought it might be fun to explore a different park." His eyes widened. "Really? Can we afford it?" The question reflected his growing awareness of financial realities, another unintended consequence of the past year's events. "I've been saving a little each month," I assured him. "And with my new position, we have a bit more flexibility, but we'll need to be budget conscious while we're there." He nodded seriously. "I can help research the cheapest food options, and we don't need to buy souvenirs." "We can each pick one special souvenir," I compromised. "The memories are the most important part anyway." As we planned this new adventure, I made sure to purchase tickets that could only be redeemed with ID verification and kept digital copies in multiple secure locations. The experience with my mother had made me perhaps overly cautious, but better safe than sorry. The most unexpected development came in the form of a letter from Naomi that arrived one ordinary Tuesday. Not an email, but an actual handwritten letter on expensive stationery. I read it alone first, bracing for accusations or manipulations. Instead, I found something resembling honesty. "Eden, I've been thinking about what happened with Jackson's tickets. At first, I was just angry that you embarrassed us at Universal, but lately, I've been wondering why I felt entitled to take something that wasn't mine to take. The truth is, I've been jealous of your relationship with Jackson. You two have something special that I don't have with the girls. Richard works constantly, and I'm more of a manager than a mother most days. The girls are in so many activities that we rarely just enjoy each other's company. Seeing how hard you work to give Jackson that trip made me feel inadequate somehow. It was easier to tell myself you were showing off than to admit you might be a better mother than I am. This isn't an excuse. What Mum and I did was wrong. I'm trying to understand why I did it so I don't repeat the pattern. The girls miss Jackson. They ask about him often. If you're willing, maybe we could arrange a supervised play date at a neutral location, the park or a pizza place. No pressure, just an offer. Naomi, the letter left me with mixed emotions. On one hand, it was perhaps the most honest communication I'd ever received from my sister. On the other, it stopped short of a direct apology to Jackson, focusing more on Naomi's feelings than the harm caused. After careful consideration and discussion with Dr. Levine, I decided to respond cautiously but positively to the overture regarding the children. Jackson was enthusiastic about seeing his cousins again. "Can we go to the park with the big playground? And can I bring my soccer ball to show them what I learned?" We arranged to meet at a public park midway between our homes. I set clear parameters with Naomi in advance. A 2-hour visit, just the children and ourselves, no discussion of family drama in front of the kids. The reunion was initially awkward, with Lily and Grace hanging back shyly, and Jackson uncertain how to bridge the months of separation. But children are remarkably adaptable, and within 30 minutes they were playing an elaborate game of their own invention, racing around the playground, with the easy camaraderie of cousins who shared a history. Naomi and I sat on a bench at a slight distance, our conversation stilted but civil. She asked about Jackson's school and activities with what seemed like genuine interest. I inquired about the twins' latest accomplishments without the competitive edge that had often characterized our interactions in the past. "He's grown so much," she observed, watching Jackson demonstrate a soccer move for the girls. "He seems happier." "He is," I agreed. "We both are." She nodded, something like regret flickering across her face. Mom asks about him all the time. She keeps the birthday card he sent her on her bedside table. The card had been Jackson's idea, a simple store-bought one with a brief message inside. Just because we're taking a break from seeing Grandma doesn't mean I should forget her birthday. He had reasoned with the straightforward wisdom of children. Jackson has a generous heart, I said. He gets that from himself. Naomi didn't argue the point, which felt like progress of a sort. That evening, as I tucked an exhausted Jackson into bed, he asked a question that caught me off guard. Mum, do you think Grandma will ever say sorry, like a real sorry? I considered the question carefully, wanting to be honest without crushing his hope. I don't know, buddy. Some people find it very hard to admit when they're wrong, but that doesn't mean we stop hoping they'll learn and grow. He nodded thoughtfully. I had fun with Lily and Grace today. They're different than they used to be, less bossy. People can change, I agreed, especially kids who are still figuring out who they want to be. And grown-ups too, he added, yawning. You changed. You stand up for us more now. His simple observation struck me profoundly. He was right. I had changed. The mother who had timidly accepted mistreatment for years, who had allowed her son to be treated as less valuable than his cousins, who had doubted her own perceptions in the face of gaslighting, that woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who recognized her worth and her son's worth, someone who understood that real love didn't demand submission to unfair treatment. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been tears and doubts, uncomfortable confrontations, and painful revelations. There had been losses. Relationships altered or ended, traditions abandoned, illusions shattered. But there had also been gains. New friendships, authentic connections, hard-won wisdom. Looking at the photo of Jackson at Universal Studios that I kept framed on our living room wall, his face alight with joy as he stood in front of Hogwarts Castle wand, raised triumphantly, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. By protecting him, I had protected myself. By teaching him about healthy boundaries, I had learned to establish my own. By showing him his worth, I had rediscovered mine. The family we had created, this small mighty unit of two expanded by chosen family like Sarah and friends who had become as close as relatives, was stronger than I had ever imagined possible. And if my mother and sister eventually found their way back to us through genuine change and respect for boundaries, there would be room for them too. But we would no longer shrink ourselves to accommodate toxicity. We would no longer accept scraps of affection in place of the love we deserved. We would no longer believe that having boundaries made us selfish, or that standing up for ourselves made us difficult. Sometimes the most powerful lesson we can teach our children is that they are worth fighting for. And sometimes in fighting for them, we learn that we are worth fighting for too. Have you ever had to stand up against family members who crossed major boundaries? What did you do, and how did it change your family dynamic? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's essential. Thanks for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes creating healthy distance is the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your children.